The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got. They're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Looks like we're going to be schwitzing for a while. So much for easing into blazing hot weather. It was absolutely gorgeous this past weekend. But we're going to have a string of 90s for a while, and the Nationals have afternoon games both tomorrow and on Thursday, a 1 o'clock game on Thursday. Now, the real brutal heat isn't supposed to start until Friday, and this weekend, forget about it. They're talking about 100 degrees. But, hey, it's summertime, and that's what we deal with here in D.C. It's the Schwitz Fest with high humidity, high temperatures, and we just have to persevere. Thank God for air conditioning. You know, when Tony used to take phone calls years ago, we once did a poll, what's the greatest invention ever? And Tony said it's the air conditioning. And it's hard to argue with that, especially this time of year. You might have a different opinion in December, January, but as we roll into hot weather here, yeah, it's really great to have air conditioning. And when it doesn't work, oh, my God. Oh, my God. So Celtics get title number 18 last night, and that's an incredible accomplishment. The NBA has essentially two teams. It's the Lakers and the Celtics. They were both tied with 17 titles. Now, the way the Lakers got to 17, they had early success with George Mikan before the Celtics got really good, and then they won a title against the Knicks in 1973, and then the Showtime Lakers, and they battled the Celtics in three of those finals. I think they lost one of them and beat them in two of them. And then the Kobe and Shaq Lakers, and then Kobe won a couple of titles down the road. So they really kind of spread them out. And this is to take absolutely nothing away from the Celtics because 18 championships is incredible. But what's even more incredible is they won 11 of them in 13 years. Bill Russell was there from 1956 through 1969. That was the last of the Russell championships. So in the last 55 years, they've won 7, which is still great. I mean, the Bullets, they got 1, right? And there are some teams that don't have any. But the fact of the matter is the Celtics' big run was over a very short period of time. They've had their championships in between. I don't think, I'm pretty sure about this, the Celtics have not won back-to-back, and this might be their opportunity, not since, of course, 1969, but this might be their opportunity to do that because they got most of the guys coming back. Now, is Al Horford at 37 going to make another run? Who knows? And Kristaps Porzingis, you know, you might as well bubble wrap him until the playoffs because he's going to get hurt. And now this latest leg injury that he suffered, let me try and take a stab at it. A torn medial retinaculum, retinaculum. I don't know how to pronounce that, but it allowed the dislocation of the posterior tibialis tendon. So it's, yes, it's described as a rare injury. Of course it's rare. You can't even damn pronounce what the injury is, but he's going to need surgery. It's going to take a couple of months to get back on track, but he played well, incredibly well in Game 1, gave them something in Game 2, missed Games 3 and 4, and last night off the bench, he only had 5 points, but there was sort of a Willis Reed spark when he came into the game, and just to have his presence on the floor, what he play, I think about 18 minutes. Let me check the box here. It was something like that, about 18 minutes, and he had 5 points. Didn't have a big dunk, which, you know, fired everybody up, but you know, that's a guy who's a big addition to them. 16 minutes on the floor, 2 of 4 from the field, and he had 2 rebounds, 5 points. But you know, he's a guy that you want to have out there, particularly when you play a bigger team like Dallas. The big guns, they performed. You know, what have we been saying throughout the playoffs? When the stars perform, that's when they win. So Jaylen Brown had 21. Jason Tatum had 31. So that's 52 points between the two of them. And they got a good game out of Holiday as well with Drew Holiday with 15 points. Al Horford, still soldiering on at his age, played 31 minutes last night, had 9 points and 9 rebounds, and that was a big key for them as well. And it was, you know, wire to wire. Watching this game, I didn't feel any need to watch the second half because the Celtics were moving the ball around the way they did in Game 1. It was great ball movement. They went up by 10 at the end of the first quarter. They extended that to 21 at the half on a buzzer beater at half court, 39 points in the second quarter. That's what pretty much put it away. And look, Dallas, they got a valiant effort out of Luka Doncic. I don't know how hurt he is, but he has been playing hurt. He had 28 points and 12 rebounds. And Kyrie Irving, for all this, well, he's turned the page. He's a new guy. He's, not the jerk that he was in the stops that he had in Boston and in Brooklyn. But the fact of the matter is, going back to Boston, the 3 games he played there, he didn't play well at all. And last night he had another clunker, 5 of 16 from the field. He had 15 points. He did have 9 assists, but they needed him to come up big. They needed him to get into the 30s, well into the 30s. Wasn't able to do that. And they didn't get much of a contribution from anybody else. There really wasn't anybody. Only 3 other guys scored in double figures, and that just wasn't enough. And to score 88 points in a stay-alive game tells you either that their offense was inept or Boston, really realized that they needed to crank up the defensive intensity. And certainly from what happened in Game 4, when they gave up 122 points and scored only 84 themselves, they knew that they had to change things. Kendrick Perkins, we played this the other night, or yesterday from the other night, when he was talking to Linda Cohn after Game 4, and she asked him about a possible comeback by Dallas. And at some point, there will be a team that will overcome 3-0, as has happened in baseball and it's happened in hockey a few times, but not this time. And Perkins said, I got a better chance of having breakfast with Oprah and Beyonce tomorrow. So he said, no way, this thing is over, and it's going to be big. And it was big. They won by 18 points last night. This was Brian Windhorst on with Scott Van Pelt with his analysis of what the Celtics have been able to do, overcoming years of disappointment to put together a really dominant run this year, both in the regular season and the playoffs, to cement title number 18.
Yeah, the best team won, and they won it through a journey. I'm sitting here watching the Celtics celebrate, and I realize over the last 5 or 6 years, I've watched the Celtics season end on this court in misery many times. I watched LeBron come in here in 2018 and win a Game 7 and really break the Celtics' hearts when they were trying to get to the finals, when they were really young, when Tatum and Brown were really young. I was here 2 years ago and watched, there was confetti on this floor, but it was to celebrate the Golden State Warriors championship. Last year I was here for Game 7 when it looked like they were going to pull off this miracle 3-0 comeback, and the Heat stunned them. And I was watching the Celtics just drag themselves off the floor, stunned that they missed that opportunity. And so it's really just symbolic that this group, and I know they've added pieces along the way, but this group has really come through a lot. Not every championship is special, Scott. All of them are incredibly hard to win, but not everyone is manufactured the same way. And the championships that are truly grown up and you go through misery and you build it from the roots, and you go all the way and build it into this big, giant, huge moment, those are the ones that are most special. And this Celtics team has been absolutely gone through the misery, gone through swinging for Kevin Durant and missing, gone through the Ime Udoka, they thought they might have that special moment, and then the near miss with had to leave the organization unceremoniously. So this moment has been a very, very long time, in the making, and the Celtics absolutely earned it, both from that journey and the way they played throughout this whole season and this whole postseason.
The team they just played got to this place for the first time, and when you talk growth, I think in listening to Kyrie, I feel like we clearly hear it. This is a guy that's in a different place than he's been in years past. I asked him point blank, am I wrong to say I see more joy? And he goes, no, that's accurate. And so he helps. And then Luka, obviously he's a young guy and he's a great talent, but there's clear room for growth for him. And I just wonder, do teams follow the blueprint? Like, teams just aren't patient, you know what I mean? And it's hard. You need a lot of things to go your way. But I feel like there's a clear sort of message here to Dallas if they stay the course with what they've got. What's the sense of the growth that is required for them moving forward?
I feel really strongly that at some point in the future, you and I are going to be talking, and instead of there being white and green on the floor and this confetti, that it would be blue for the Mavericks, because Luka Doncic is too special of a talent, too great of a player not to get back and improve on it. And just like I described what it took for the Celtics to get there,
right,
I think Doncic is in the middle of going through that. He is such a special player, but he is still at the beginning of that journey. And Kyrie, I think, understands that. And Kyrie is in the middle of building this. He has the ring. He doesn't need to prove anything, but he's still at this journey with the Mavericks. He did not play well in the 3 games here in Boston. Now, the Mavericks lost this series for a number of reasons. It wasn't just Kyrie, but while Kyrie is taking this with great maturity and somebody who's been seen a lot, he's going to look in the mirror at some point and realize he didn't deliver his best either. I did think we would have needed something incredibly special from Luka and Kyrie just to get to Game 6. The proper team won. That doesn't mean what happened here won't be very meaningful for Luka and the Mavs in potentially the very near future.
When we get a chance to visit with some of the Celtics and hopefully their head coach, Joe Mazzulla, I'm going to ask them what I'm going to ask you. And your insight is certainly valued. It's just different because it's from the outside looking in. Do you see this tonight, Brian, as a finish line for this Celtics group or as a launch point to something beyond?
Well, they're all so young, and the way the structure of the team is and the way the rules are, they will be able to bring this team back next year. They will be in position to really seriously defend their championship. I'm not sure what the situation with Kristaps Porzingis is going to be. I think it's a pretty serious injury, but there's no reason they can't bring this team back. In 2 years from now, that's when the rules and the money are going to bite, because in the next few days, Jason Tatum is getting $315 million, and they're going to have to extend Derek White before too long, and that money is going to get crazy. But tonight's not the night to talk about money. What I'm here to tell you is there's no reason why we can't be right back here next year with this confetti coming down, celebrating number 19. But it's not going to be easy. I know it looked easy this year. Some things went their way, and it's only right because some things went against them in years past, but they earned it, and they'll have a great opportunity to do it again next year.
That's Brian Windhorst. Yeah, repeating's tough, and you don't know what's going to happen. The injury to Porzingis is serious. He's going to have surgery, but should be ready for the start of next season. But I have to laugh when he just casually throws out that Jason Tatum is going to get $315 million. Not that he doesn't deserve it based on the way the money works these days. But I remember 30 years ago, and that's maybe a long time ago for you. It doesn't seem as long ago for me. But Glenn Big Dog Robinson was going to be the number 1 pick of the NBA draft coming out of Purdue, and he was taken by the Milwaukee Bucks, who were owned by Herb Kohl, Kohl's department store, Senator Herb Kohl. And in those days, they didn't have a rookie salary cap. And so Glenn Big Dog Robinson said, I would like to have $100 million. And Cole said, well, that's great. Why don't you give me $100 million and I'll give you the team? And nowadays it's just, casual numbers. And Windhorst saying he's going to get $315 million and White's going to get paid. And then the money's really going to get crazy. Well, what point is $315 million not crazy? I guess it's not. That's the modern economics of the NBA. Jaylen Brown was the MVP of the series. He had 21 points last night in the closeout. Also had 8 rebounds and 6 assists. You could have flipped a coin, but they went with Brown, and he talked to Scott Van Pelt after the game about what it means to him to win that award.
It's an honor, and rest in peace to the legend, Bill Russell, to get this award. I can't even tell you what that means to me, and I could never live in his footsteps, but it's just great to be able to stand here in the Celtics jersey and stand for everything that he stood for. So I'm super grateful. It was a full team effort, and I'm looking forward to what comes next.
Jaylen, you mentioned Bill and the history of this franchise, and now you stand alone, one clear of the Lakers, to add to it, right? It's a big-ass book on the shelf that this team has written, and now you add your chapter. The significance of that to your group, how aware and how much is that celebrated, what it means to do that?
The beauty in it, it's a team sport, so doing it together with all my teammates is just going to be what the memories are going to all look back to. And I'm just grateful that through all the journeys, through all the ups and downs, we stayed together. We stayed with it. This whole playoff journey was a great experience, and we won together. We did it together.
Al Horford is a champion. I know everybody's a champion, but look, I see the smile creep into your face. I mean, we know what he's done, and I just think he's such a professional. You see it day in, day out. To be able to give that man that, what does that mean personally and to the group?
I couldn't tell you enough how Al has just been the calming presence and leadership presence to our group. And just for our bigs to get hurt, Luke got hurt, KP got hurt, and Al Horford held it down for us all playoffs. And he's at 37 years old. He got 5 kids. For him to come out and do what he's been doing, it's been fantastic. So, no, Al is a legend. He's a great teammate. He's a great person, and I couldn't be any prouder of anybody. Al has held it down for us all playoffs.
He's got a couple years on your coach, and hopefully we're going to get a chance to visit with him. I appreciate so much the seriousness of that man, and I get it, and it works. But to see the smile creep into his face and to see the satisfaction, right, to have earned that for him, I imagine that's got to be satisfying because I find his approach to be so interesting, right? I always wonder, does he smile? And the answer tonight is heck yes, he does. To put a smile on his face, Jalen, is just sort of a final thought, the satisfaction in that.
We all smiling right now. We all smiling, so it's great. This feeling is great, and I'm happy to be here, and I thank you guys for the time.
That's Jaylen Brown, the Finals MVP. Joe Mazzulla, finally cracking a smile last night. You've seen all the news conferences. He doesn't smile at those. He doesn't smile during the game. He smiled after winning. And although it's not the same thing, I remember when the Cowboys finally won the Super Bowl. This is when they beat Miami. They beat the hell out of the Dolphins before the Dolphins went back the following year, undefeated, beat the Redskins, and then followed up with their second straight. But their first year in the Super Bowl, Dallas just clobbered them. And the Cowboys, after years and years of disappointment, losing to the Packers in the NFC, or what they called it then, the NFL championship game, and then losing the year before to the Baltimore Colts when Jim O'Brien kicked that field goal. And then to finally win, you saw Tom Landry smile. It's not quite the same with Mazzulla because he's a young guy. He's in his early 30s, I think, and it's a different situation. But after all the disappointment that the Celtics have had, to finally come through and win the championship, it meant so much. And Jaylen Brown celebrating winning the MVP. We're going to hear next hour from Jason Tatum. One of the great still photos to come out of this. I don't know if you've seen this yet. But with the confetti flying, he lifts his son up in the air. And it's such a great portrait. There's also video of him celebrating with his son. But talked about that with SVP, and we'll get to that in the next hour as well. But next, Rory speaks, or at least releases a statement after his crushing disappointment at the U.S. Open over the weekend. Don't go away.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We're in vacation time for the NFL, so any nugget makes news. And Brandon Ayuk kind of did that yesterday. San Francisco 49ers wide receiver. He's had 1,000-yard seasons the last 2 years. He's 26, just turned 26. He's a great player, and he's up for contract extension. And he was doing TikTok with, and this is why this is newsworthy to us. We'll talk more about it later on. But he was with Jaden Daniels, and he said, the 49ers don't want me back. If you don't know, Daniels played at Arizona State with Ayuk. They're obviously friends. And the Commanders have cap room. And he's coming from the 49ers, where Adam Peters used to work. Will it work out that way? Who knows? It could be just a leverage play on the part of Ayuk. But it also may be something that could be something that they do. And we'll see. We'll see what happens. If I were Ayuk, I'm not sure I'd want to play with the Commanders right now. Yeah, you want to get the most money. Somebody's going to pay you. 49ers are going to wind up paying you in the long run here. But, Commanders is going to be a couple of years. You got an offense now that's a Super Bowl offense, and you got a quarterback who has been to a Super Bowl. So I would say, if you're wanting to jump just because of some bucks and the chance to play with Daniels, who's going to go through growing pains. As good as he may become, he's going to go through growing pains. beware about that. But, that's down the line, and they got to do this dance for a while. And he is under contract for next season, so they don't have to extend him. But he's making some noise that he wants out of there. I doubt the 49ers have told him we don't want you back. I really doubt that. Rory McIlroy. Oh, my God. I mean, how do you feel sorry for someone who is a multi-millionaire? Okay, and he's won 4 majors, so it's not like he's been shut out of majors. But the feeling of watching a professional golfer, one of the best in the business, miss like 4.5 feet of putts, 2 putts on Sunday, which cost him the championship. And if he made one of them, at least he would have been in a playoff with Bryson DeChambeau, but that didn't happen. He had bogeys on 2 of the last 3 holes and watched, and it's a heartbreaking thing to see him watching on television inside a room as DeChambeau sinks the winning putt, and he just jumped in his car and left and was not heard from. He's supposed to participate in the news conference, talk to the media, wouldn't talk to the media. So yesterday, Rory released this statement saying, "Yesterday was a tough day, probably the toughest I've had in 17 years as a professional golfer. First, I'd like to congratulate Bryson. He's a worthy champion and exactly what professional golf needs right now. I think we can all agree on that." Well, not everyone does. I'll get to what Sally Jenkins said in a minute. As I reflect, said McIlroy, on my week, I'll rue a few things over the course of the tournament, mostly putts on 16 and 18 on the final day. But as I always do, I'll look at the positives of the week that far outweigh the negatives. As I've said at the start of the tournament, I feel closer to winning my next major championship than I ever have. It's been 10 years. The one word that I would describe my career is resilient. I've shown my resilience over and over in the last 17 years, and I will again. I'm going to take a few weeks away from the game to process everything and build myself back up for my defense of the Genesis Scottish Open and the Open at Royal Troon. See you in Scotland. Alan Shipnuck covers golf for Golf Digest, writes books about golf. He was on yesterday with Andrew Siciliano, filling in for Rich Eisen on the Eisen Show, and discussing what must be going through Rory right now as he tries to move on from this complete U.S. Open disaster.
It was hard to watch. It really was. And it's definitely fair to question how Rory is going to recover from this. The only glimmer of hope, if you're a McIlroy fan, is that prior to this, the worst loss he'd ever suffered was 2011 Masters. He had a 4-shot lead on Sunday, and he completely came undone. And, was in the cabin, that famous shot on the 10th hole, shot 80. And the very next major, the U.S. Open, he came back and he won by 8 strokes, and he found something inside of himself to bounce back. It's going to take that kind of soul searching and that kind of tenacity and mental toughness. But it's a lot easier when you're a young phenom without so much scar tissue. I mean, everything Rory's been through on and off the golf course since then, it just seems like his nerve endings are a little fried. And it's unfathomable that he's never going to win another major championship again through this prime when he's winning everything else. But that's where we are. It was a brutal loss, and how he recovers is going to be fascinating.
Alan, you were there. How was it viewed when he left?
A little churlish, a little immature. I mean, but also to me, it was a lost opportunity for Rory, because there have been plenty of gutting losses on the golf course. You think about Greg Norman at Augusta in '96. You think about Phil at Winged Foot, Tom Watson at Turnberry. You can go down the list. These guys stood up and they faced the music. And in their conversations after the tournament with reporters, the humanity poured out, and they became much more sympathetic characters. And the pain they were feeling, and the golf world kind of grieved along with them. For Rory just to peel out and jilt essentially the fans, because reporters, we don't matter other than we're the voice of the fans. We get to ask the questions that the fans want the answer to. We're just their Confederates. And fans were kind of denied some closure. They wanted to hear about Rory, what happened, what he was feeling. And so it just was a mistake on a lot of levels. I mean, Rory has banked a lot of goodwill through the years. This is not going to curdle his relationship necessarily with the press or with golf fans, but I think it's going to follow him more. He could have gotten up there and not said a word and just burst into tears, and the whole world would have wanted to hug him, And now he's just going to prolong this agony. He's still going to have to face the music eventually. So I think it was a tactical mistake, but clearly it's reflective of how much pain he was feeling. And I'm sure golf fans have know he's been through this thing with his wife where he filed for divorce and they got back together, and the emotional weight of that. Like, I certainly understand him not wanting to talk and not answer questions. Like, that's a human reaction, but he's paid $80 million a year to be a spokesman for golf and to be it's one of its biggest stars. And that it's not just when you win, it's also when you lose that people want to hear from you.
Yeah, and I would say by and large he's been a stand-up guy. I heard Tony talking about this yesterday. You kind of forgive him for what he did, but that was it was a tough day to deal with on Sunday. As for DeChambeau, and now being celebrated as a great champion, which he is a 2-time U.S. Open champion, but and I guess this would have had more impact like a year and a half ago. It's so strange what's happened with the LIV Tour and the PGA, where now they were going to merge. Now they haven't merged yet. The LIV Tour, for casual golfers like me, doesn't really exist. Casual golf fans, I should say. I shouldn't call myself a golfer. I'm a failed golfer. I tried it, didn't like it. But we only watch the majors. So it's insignificant to us, to people like me, whether or not some of the stars are playing on the weekly events, because generally we don't watch them, and when they have the majors, everybody plays. But there is still the ongoing rough feelings about those who jumped to the LIV Tour and those who fought against it, like Rory, very outspoken at the beginning, now has had to kind of walk back on that because of the way it's supposed to happen, where they're supposed to merge, though they haven't merged yet. It's very strange. So what Sally writes today in the Post, Sally Jenkins, it's kind of like a column that should have been written like a year and a half ago. It doesn't have as much impact now. But she writes about DeChambeau, who she does not like, and says that the win should not obscure the fact that he took Saudi blood money from a terrorism financer government, that he stumble-lucked into victory on one of the few courses in the world, Pinehurst No. 2, that would forgive his erratic thrashing off the tee. DeChambeau's character isn't defined by his idle, dimpled chit-chat with spectators between tees, and he does go out of his way to do that. He even carries a Sharpie in his pocket to sign autographs when he's walking from the fairway to the green. He will do that. But she says, all of it was rich coming from a guy who betrayed American audiences and bailed on his U.S.-based PGA Tour colleagues to take giant bags of money from the sheiks of Kingdom, a reported $125 million for a 4-year contract. And his reasoning for taking it, nobody's perfect, he said. And then she goes on to say about DeChambeau, there's no forgetting he's a phony, one who champions a regime that alleged connections with the 9/11 attacks that killed almost 3,000 Americans and was behind the murder of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The cringiest moment of DeChambeau's post-victory ingratiating was when he disgracefully invoked the late Payne Stewart, the vividly clad icon, after DeChambeau made the save from the bunker. He bellowed, "That's Payne right there, baby," as he walked off the 18th green, as if Stewart had somehow intervened from heaven or would have given him a benediction. He was wearing a little button on the back of his hat, which showed Payne Stewart celebrating a great shot. All the evidence suggests that Stewart would have been disgusted by DeChambeau's defection and would have reviled LIV Golf. Stewart was an ardent, demonstrative patriot who wept during the Star-Spangled Banner at the Ryder Cup. He specifically referenced the human rights violations of foreign regimes in discussing his American privilege. So, she doesn't like him. I don't know how the golf world views him. I just like to watch, major championship golf. And to me, it had all the elements that you want in sports. Great shot making and just heartbreaking performances. I mean, the drama that went down in the last half hour of the U.S. Open on Sunday, at least for me, was dramatic television, something that you can't get anywhere else. The story is being written as it comes out. It's not like watching a great movie or a great play, although those are enjoyable experiences as well. These are things that play out in real time, and you get to watch them unfold. All right, to the NBA, and back to the NBA, as this never-ending story of TNT. Will they keep the rights? Will they lose the rights? What's going to happen with Charles Barkley? A lot of stuff around this, and now that the NBA season is over and we're heading towards the draft, maybe this gets resolved in the next week or so, or maybe it's going to take the rest of the summer to get this done. But Charles Barkley did something the other night where he said That's it. I'm going to do my last year with TNT. It's the last year of the contract. I don't know what's going to happen with the rights and all that, but I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to retire. I think that's a leverage play, if you ask me. You know, when you say you're going to retire, somebody's going to try and talk you out of retirement. He's that good. And networks will throw bags and bags of money at him. But he may be serious about it. He's talked about retiring before. 25 years working at TNT. He likes his freedom. He now is playing golf better, so he wants to play golf every day. We'll see how long that lasts. I'm not buying it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think over the course of the next year, they'll work something out, whether he stays at TNT or he gets a contract to go someplace else. I just can't imagine a job where you work only a couple of days a week for 8 months a year is something that you walk away from. You know, you got to do something. I understand retirement, but retirement isn't sitting around all day and just playing some golf now and then. It doesn't work that way. So this was Reggie Miller, who's a colleague of Barkley at TNT, lead analyst, on with Dan Patrick yesterday, asked about the Barkley retirement and whether or not he buys it.
I don't want to believe it. Well, first of all, let me say this. This could be retirement for all of us at Turner Network next year.
What are you going to do? Like, have you been told anything? I know Charles in the studio show, but, you're their lead analyst here.
We are in the dark. We have no idea. This is way above my pay grade. I'm hoping. I think our leadership is at the table from everything I'm hearing, again, which isn't a lot. And I hope they're, having a 2 minutes left in the fourth, and they're, trying to pull out a win here. It would be nice. I think Charles is getting ahead of the story because his name is being thrown out there with NBC and Amazon and the possibilities. And I think he just wanted to set the record straight, and good for him. He's always done things on his own terms. You and I know Charles very well, and he's not going to let other people dictate what he wants to do. And I think he wanted to get ahead of the story and announce this. So if this is his last year, we've had conversations. I'm like, look, dude, we're going to go out with a bang. So whatever happens at our network, if we do get a piece of the pie and we're one of the four horsemen or not, if this is our lame duck year and this is my last year at Turner as well, we're going to have fun and go out with a bang.
That's Reggie Miller yesterday with Dan Patrick, setting up for what could be a farewell tour for everybody at TNT, or there could be a last-minute save, and I would be shocked if Charles Barkley follows through with this. He might, but my feeling is you're not going to see him walk away from that. More react to the Celtics' 18th championship last night, and it was 48 years ago today that Charlie Finley was told by Bowie Q, no. You can't sell your players for money. That's not in the best interest of baseball. We'll get to that and more. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. 18 championships for the Boston Celtics as they move ahead of the Lakers, who have 17. Number 3. I'll give you a second to think about that. Number 3 in terms of championships. Golden State Warriors. Pretty much new money. They won 1975. Painful for some of us as they swept the Washington Bullets as underdogs, and they've loaded up on championships recently. And so it's been, the history of the NBA. It's two teams, and the Celtics now have the upper hand. The Lakers have got to be pulling their hair out right now. Oh, how are we going to get back? But they have no patience, see? They don't do it that way. They've got LeBron and Anthony Davis, and they want to add a third superstar. And, if somehow the Mavericks decide they want to get off the Kyrie train after losing last night, they'll do everything it takes to get Kyrie. And LeBron wanted him before, even though they parted ways in a difficult way after the Cleveland Cavaliers won the championship in 2016. They both matured a little bit, and they realized they're better together than apart. I mean, who knows? It's just crazy. But, just to think that the number 3 team is 10 titles behind the number 2 team. And then you think about teams that have won, like the Bullets or like the Seattle Supersonics, who are technically now the Oklahoma City Thunder. Who else? Knicks only have 2. Yeah, Knicks with 2. Chicago Bulls have 6. Okay, the 6 that they won with Jordan. So but there's got to be another Michael Jordan who shows up there. That's 6 over 8 years. And that's another thing about the Celtics is that with the 18 championships, they won 11 of them in 13 years. And Bill Russell, if he didn't hurt his knee in 1959, they might have won 12. That was the St. Louis Hawks year winning because Russell was hurt. And then the one that they lost in the Eastern Finals in 67, that was to a 76ers team, which is still regarded as one of the best of all time. Wilt Chamberlain and Billy Cunningham and Hal Greer. They were Luke Jackson. That was a great, great team. And they deserved to win the championship that year. But otherwise, the Celtics owned that period of time. And the last one they won with Russell, that was the one where they upset the Lakers. Lakers had a 3-1 lead in that series, and Boston came back and won the series at the Forum. Bill Russell then retired, and that was 55 years ago. And in the 55 years since, they've won 7 of them. Right? Because they had 11 with Russell and then 7 over the last 55 years, and God knows how many guys played. They have not won back-to-back. They could win back-to-back this year. Get back to some more react from the game. Did want to throw this in because, well, it's football, it's Commanders, and it's intriguing. And with all the money that they had to spend in free agency, they did something that they haven't done in decades. They were prudent. Rather than, oh, my God, look at what we got to spend all this. As soon as Dan Snyder became the owner of the then Redskins in May of 1999, it was too late to do anything. The draft had already passed, free agency was over, and he couldn't spend money. But they were left in very good shape for the salary cap with what Charlie Casserly had done. He had done some really smart things. He was helped by Mike Ditka, incredibly wanting to trade his entire draft so he could move up a couple of spots to take Ricky Williams. But they took Champ Bailey, who's in the Hall of Fame. Couldn't keep him, but he's in the Hall of Fame. Ricky Williams is not. And they were able to do a lot of different things with the draft haul that they got. And he left them in very good shape cap-wise. Well, with all that money available the following year, that's when Danny went fantasy football shopping. And he got an over-the-hill Deion Sanders. He got Bruce Smith, who had 2 good years left, but he played 4. He went out and got Jeff George. I mean, he couldn't help himself. He was flush with cash, and he couldn't wait to flush it. Adam Peters didn't do business that way. They didn't sign big names. They signed Bobby Wagner, but Bobby Wagner's older. There really were no, Marcus Mariota, no huge expenditures, and they still have some cash. Could they go and get somebody? Yes, they could. Not in free agency this way, but they would have money to pay this person, and that is Brandon Ayuk, who's coming off a terrific year with the 49ers, 75 catches, 1,300 yards, 7 touchdowns. Year before, 2022, he had 1,000 yards, 78 catches, and 8 touchdowns. And here's the big thing. At the age of 26, he has missed just 1 game in the last 3 seasons. 1 game in 3 years. He's 6 feet tall, but he weighs 200. He's, got some bulk to him, which you kind of like. And he's got history with Jaden Daniels. They were teammates together at Arizona State before Ayuk was drafted by the 49ers in 2020. And so he put out a TikTok video yesterday, Ayuk did. And in the video, he's talking FaceTime with Jaden Daniels. And Ayuk tells Daniels, they said they don't want me back, they being the 49ers. Daniels says, that's it? And Ayuk says, I swear. And then he prompts Daniels to shout, my boy. Ayuk wrote in the caption, I'm laughing but crying FR. So, that seems to be 2 guys who played together before. Hey, they don't want you? Well, we want you. Now, one thing we've seen with Daniels, he's very humble, at least publicly. So he's unlikely to go to Adam Peters and say, hey, you got to go get him. Peters, knows how to do business if he wants to do this, and he certainly knows the 49ers coming from there. Ayuk is going into the last year of his rookie contract. That's slated to count $14 million against the cap in 2024. Now, he missed the offseason workouts and mini camp, so he's going to get fined about $100,000, but he's looking for the going rate for a wide receiver. Justin Jefferson just signed for $35 million a year. Is he worth $35 million a year? Probably not. But this is leverage that he might have, might be able to do that. 49ers are a team that's, coming off a Super Bowl win or Super Bowl appearance. They'd like to go back. So I don't think they're going to be looking at any, draft pick things. You have to give up something. And I don't see what Washington would be able to give up that would satisfy them. No, I mean, you give up Terry McLaurin? No, I don't think that would work out that way. Would you give up, I don't know, a defensive lineman? Would you give up? There isn't that much talent on the roster that could make a trade like this happen. And I don't think, Daniels is going to be pouting or anything like that, but it brings up an interesting possibility. And Ayuk would certainly be a guy that you would want. He would make a good number two, a great number two to McLaurin, or maybe even a number one. And McLaurin, if he's a number two, I don't think it would be a problem either. He's that type of guy. But it's, it's the games people play at this time of year. And when you're seeing wide receivers making not quarterback money quite, because top-notch quarterbacks are making $55 million now. But at $35 million a year, do you do that? The encouraging thing for me would be that he's missed one game in the last 3 years, that he's durable. I think that's highly important. And he is a big playmaker. There's no question about that. But there's a new day in Ashburn, and the new day does not include doing the impetuous, stupid things that they used to do under Dan Snyder. Back to the finals. Jason Tatum with 31 points last night, and really emotional scene after the game as he's seen hugging his son and lifting him high in the air with the confetti in the background. That's going to be a picture that's probably going to win a Pulitzer Prize. I think it's just a great still photo of and capturing the moment of celebration. And after he had a chance to compose himself a little bit when the confetti had all hit the floor, he had an interview with Scott Van Pelt last night on ESPN.
Jason, the joy is evident, and it appears that a burden's lifted. If that's an accurate read, man, how do you frame this moment right now as you stand there, confetti all over the floor?
It's just surreal. It still hasn't really processed. Like, I dreamed about this moment of what it would be like. I can honestly say it's 10 times better. So just trying to stay in a moment, enjoy this incredible night. And it's like, wow, we did it.
Right.
we
yeah,
did
you
it.
did. Yesterday's Father's Day. I said it when we showed the highlight. There's a picture, somebody got it, that I guarantee is going to be in your house. It's you and Deuce, and there's confetti. And as it's falling, I'm thinking, if I'm you, like, you got to be asking yourself, God, please slow this down, right? Like, may this moment last forever. It's you and your child, and you've just won a title. As best as you can, hugging your son and that. What's that like, Jason?
It was. It's hard to put in words. It's like what you dream about, and to be in that moment and sharing that with my favorite person in the world.
Oh, that's awesome,
for him to be old enough to understand
right.
what's going on, and to have him, he's like, Daddy, you're the best in the world. And it's like, man, this is priceless. It's a priceless moment.
Yeah, but see, what's cool is the fact that you had these bumps in the road. He would have been too young. If you got there too early, he wouldn't get it. So he got to see Dad, right? Like, have to swallow that Game 7 losses and the disappointment, right? Like, all of that is part of it. And I asked Jalen this earlier. How does that magnify the fact that you get to the top of the mountain after you were so close and weren't quite able to make it there?
Honestly, I think those moments, as tough as they were, and they were tough, losing in the conference finals last year, losing in the finals a few years ago, and seeing the Warriors celebrating on home floor makes this moment that much sweeter. You appreciate it more.
Sure, that makes sense. I got to ask about Al. I mean, I couldn't not ask about the grown man, about the old man in the building. I mean, to be able to. Look, everyone wins, and it means something to everybody. But given who he is, I feel like one of the ultimate professionals in your game. For everyone in that room, I have to believe that was a huge part of this, yes?
Absolutely, and he was essentially my vet when I came in the door, and knowing that he doesn't have that many years left, for us to be able to win this together and win this for him, and know how much this means to him and his family, and how much he means to myself and my teammates. Incredible experience.
All right. Well, last thought. When you're driving home or somebody's driving you home, whenever that might be, what do you imagine will go through your mind as you're working your way back to your spot tonight?
Just a sense of relief, a sense of gratitude. Have to pinch myself to just I just kept saying, wow. Like, I'm looking up, it says champions, it's confetti everywhere. This is incredible.
Yeah, Jason Tatum with 31 points last night, and that picture is just tremendous of him lifting up his son after the championship. Horford, 37 years old. He played more playoff games than any other player before winning a championship. It's 180-something, like 183 before finally winning the title last night. And you think back to 2016, which was that wild summer of free agency where Kevin Durant went from Oklahoma City and went to Golden State, won 2 championships there. That's when the money just exploded in the NBA because of the way the collective bargaining worked with the revenue and the big contract and television that was signed. So teams had money to burn. And the Wizards, still being run by Ernie Grunfeld, made a big run at Al Horford. And if I'm not mistaken, he took less money to sign with the Celtics. Well, it was a great move on his part. He smelled the organizations and liked what they were cooking a lot better in Boston, and finally gets his championship at the age of 37. I remember watching his dad, Tito Horford, play. I don't know if he made it to the NBA, but I think he played at the University of Miami. Pretty good college player. Not a great pro, but obviously his son turned out to be that. Now, as for Dallas, Luka showed the best and the worst of him during these playoffs, and in the game where he needed to, play great to keep his season alive, he was solid last night. 12 of 25 with 28 points. He had 12 rebounds and 5 assists, and he did not look himself in the entire playoffs. You saw I thought it was a bad look where they were wrapping him up like a mummy before the game because of his chest injury. But did not use injury as an excuse when discussing with the media what happened in the series.
Luka, now that the series is over, how much were you hurting?
It doesn't matter if I was hurt. How much was I hurt? I was out there, tried to play, but I didn't do enough.
Yeah, that's what you're supposed to say. If you're out there, you're healthy enough to play. The Kyrie Irving story, it's taken an interesting turn this year as he's suddenly turned into this mature team guy and beloved. And you saw him at the end of the game with like 2.5 minutes to go. The game was out of reach, and he's gone over to the Celtics bench and hugging everybody, where he was pretty much a pariah in Boston, that he had to get out of there because he was going to sign with Kevin Durant, and they were going to win a title together in Brooklyn, which didn't happen. They had invested a lot in him, and he left. He made that commercial where he wanted his number retired in the rafters and all that stuff. And so now he's this mature guy, and this leader, and he's talking like, okay, this is just the start of something big in Dallas.
We answered a lot of questions this year on what we were capable of doing, and now it's just about being consistent. I think, probably in the last week I said that, I wanted to be remembered as one of the best teams of this era. The last few champions have been a new one each and every year. So I see an opportunity for us to really build our future in a positive manner where, this is almost like a regular thing for us, and we're competing for championships. And, I think from a spiritual standpoint, I think I enjoyed this journey more than any other season. Just because of the redemption arc and being able to learn as much as I did about myself and my teammates and the organization and the people that I'm around. It's a lot of good people here, so it makes coming to work a lot of fun. And when you have that type of environment, I think it's easy to achieve goals that are bigger than yourself because everyone's really dialed in and having a good sense of joy about them.
That's if you buy the redemption arc. I'm not so sure that it's 100% that the redemption arc has happened. He's worked hard to shed the image that he richly deserved, and, good for him for saying that it was his fault what happened to him in Boston, that he did it to himself. He understands that. But I think it may be a little bit early to say redemption arc. There's been some really positive signs, particularly during the playoffs, but also on the court, not full redemption, because in the 3 Boston games, he didn't play well. And he didn't play well last night in a stay alive. For all that stuff we heard of, he's 14-0 in closeout games. Well, in a game that he needed to stay alive in, he shoots 5 for 16 and winds up with 15 points. That's not going to get it done. So if you think the page has been completely turned on Kyrie, I would caution you to hesitate on that, because let's see how this all plays out, and let's see what happens in the offseason with Dallas and what kind of demands he makes and whatever else. And is he going to be completely comfortable being second fiddle to Luka? Maybe he is at this point in his career, but that's why he got out of Cleveland, because he didn't like being LeBron's running mate. He wanted to do it himself. All right, coming up, it was 48 years ago today that Charlie Finley, knowing he was going to lose his star players, sold them, and the commissioner said, nope, sorry. We'll get to that story and more as we continue. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Poland Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
I got Mike Callow sitting in for Tony today. It's so different to be a sports fan now than when I was a kid. And maybe the biggest reason is free agency. Players didn't change teams in the old days unless they were traded. And now, as sports fans, we become general managers as well as fans of teams. Well, can they go get this guy? Will he go here in free agency? We just talked about Brandon Ayuk, who's going into the last year of his deal with the 49ers and puts out a TikTok video where he and Jaden Daniels are seemingly celebrating the fact that the 49ers don't want him back and maybe they can get together in Washington. And all the things. We didn't deal with that stuff in the past. And things changed dramatically and should have changed because it was an unfair system. Baseball had what they called the reserve clause, meaning that a player couldn't leave when his contract was up because he remained property of the team that had originally drafted him or traded for him. So you could have a Triple Crown year, come to the end of your contract, didn't matter, nobody else could sign you. You signed for what the Yankees gave you. In fact, I think the story goes that when Mickey Mantle did win the Triple Crown, he was offered a pay cut because his batting average wasn't as high as it was the year before. That's the kind of stuff that went on when the management had the upper hand. Well, that all began to change in the 1970s when Curt Flood challenged the reserve clause. He lost in the Supreme Court, but it paved the way for the opening of free agency in 1976 when Marvin Miller, as head of the Players Association, told a couple of players whose contracts were up, you go negotiate with other teams, and the door opened up. I don't know all the legalese that went into it, but it changed everything quite dramatically in 1976. Well, that year, Charlie Finley saw the handwriting on the wall with his Oakland A's teams that had won 3 straight World Series, 1972, 1973, and 1974. That was a real dynasty, and he had his team, whoever was running his player acquisition, they were great in drafting and signing great players. They had superstars across the board. But as Finley knew, he wasn't going to be able to pay them what they would be able to get on the open market, so he got what he could for him. And it started in April as the season began. He traded Reggie Jackson and Ken Holtzman to the Orioles. Now, in 1976, the trade deadline was June 15th. It's August 1st now. It's 6 weeks later. But it was very early in 1976, June 15th. And just before the deadline, Finley sold Joe Rudy and Rollie Fingers to the Boston Red Sox for $1 million apiece, and Vita Blue to the Yankees for $1.5 million. And he made the trade to the Red Sox during a series against the A's. So there's actually some pictures of Joe Rudy and I believe Raleigh Fingers, I've seen Broody, I think there's one of Fingers as well, wearing Red Sox uniforms. Like, okay, we're going to Boston. That's done deal. Red Sox have been in the World Series the year before. We're going to go to Boston, and we're going to help them win this year. And that's when, and this happened June 15th, 3 days later, June 18th, 48 years ago, 1976, Bowie Kuhn said, nope. We're going to void those transactions because this is in the best interest of baseball. This was actually in the best interest of Charlie Finley. He wasn't going to sign these guys, so he was getting $3.5 million in cash, which was a lot of money in those days, and he could go out and sign other free agents and sign other players. But, Finley said, you can't do that. So Finley sued Bowie Kuhn for $10 million, and a few weeks later, this was early July, right after the 4th of July, Finley showed up on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
Now, why did he stop the sale?
Well, John, it's pretty hard for me to figure that out. As a matter of fact, I'm just anxiously awaiting the time when Bowie Kuhn will tell it to the judge why he stopped it.
That's right. You did file a $10 million lawsuit. Now, I think what concerns a lot of people, and some of this has been in the press, they said, well, it's not fair that professional team owners can buy and sell baseball players like cattle or chattel slaves or so forth, and that the players should be free to make their own deals and should not be held and, in other words, bartered like cattle. How do you feel about that?
Well, Johnny, ever since the history of the game, players have been bought and sold. You go back to the days when Babe Ruth was sold from Boston to the Yankees. I recall Dizzy Dean when he was sold to the Cubs for $185,000. 1934, Joe Cronin was sold to the Boston Red Sox from Washington, and at that time he was sold for $250,000. That $250,000 in 1934 is worth $1,040,000 today. And there's Ferguson Jenkins was sold for $200,000 recently in November of 1975. Commissioner said nothing about that deal. A little later on, Minnesota Twins sold Bert Blyleven to Texas for $250,000. Right. And just last year, the San Francisco Giants sold Dave Kingman to the New York Mets, who incidentally, for $160,000, who incidentally is leading the major leagues with 26 home runs today. Did the commissioner say anything about that? Nothing at all. And let me take you one step further. In 1971, the Oakland A's, if you please, paid the then Washington Senators $300,000 for Darrell Knowles and Mike Epstein. Did the commissioner do anything about that? No. But when I sell 3 players myself, and for business reasons, plus the fact I was going to take that money and end up with a much stronger team by purchasing these some 52 ball players who are playing out their options right now. And I was going to have a stronger team in 1977 than I had starting in 1976. As it stands right now, I'm going to have nothing.
So these players are not playing for anyone right now, right?
Well, they're playing for the A's, but I don't think that it's my property. The commissioner forced me to use these players after I'd sold them.
So they are still playing for Oakland.
Yes,
now,
sir.
What will happen at the end of the season? This is now up to the courts, is it?
Well, it's in the hands of the court, the federal court in Chicago, and we're very optimistic over our chances of winning this lawsuit. I might say that Bowie Kuhn has been the 5th commissioner in baseball, and never in the history of the game of baseball has a commissioner ever stepped in to stop a sale of a ball player. And why he stopped this one, as I say, let him tell it to the judge.
Yeah. Do you think it could be a personal vendetta?
Well, yes, I really do. I'm sorry to say, John. Yeah. And it's quite unfortunate. I was fined one time in the World Series in 1973 when we were playing the New York Mets. We took a player that the doctor said don't play him by the name of Mike Andrews.
I remember that.
And the only thing I did was give the letter to the commissioner of baseball, where the doctor said, don't play Mike Andrews. He's physically unable to play anymore in the series. If you use him, you'll hurt him. I handed him that letter, and would you believe it? He fined me $5,000 just because a doctor examined Mike Andrews and said that he was physically unable to play. And during that same World Series, I was fined another $2,000 because it got so dark out there. The umpire forgot to turn the lights on, and I told to send word up to the electrician to turn the lights on. And when I did, the umpire jumped up like something had been shot. Wanted the lights back off again. So I was fined $2,000 for that. But let me say this, at the end of the season, baseball changed their rules to where the lights can be turned on at any time, not at the end of an inning. So I got fined $2,000 for that. And in the same World Series, he fined me another $1,000 because we only used 24 players, and I wanted to make an announcement to the fans that we were playing with 24, and the Mets had 25. So I got fined $1,000 for making the announcement.
You better, Charles, you better win this lawsuit just to pay your fines. I mean, if this keeps up like this.
Well, let me.
How do you answer? Yeah, go right ahead now.
I'd just like to add one other thing, too. You're talking about the commissioner having a personal vendetta. I don't like to sit here and make these accusations, but you asked me a question, right, Johnny, and I'm a little forthright, you know. At one time, Reggie Jackson, several years back in his career, when he was having trouble with his timing, I was going to send him down to AAA just for 10 days. Mm-hmm. And Reggie wanted to go down, too, for that 10 days. Commissioner Kuhn gets in touch with me, and he says, hey, you can't send him down. He said he read it in the paper that I was possibly going to send him down. Right. He said, you can't send him down. It won't be in the best interest of baseball. So I told him off, and after telling him off, I got fined $500 for that.
This fine seems so innocent, $500, $1,000, $2,000. But that was reasonable money in those days. The explanation on Mike Andrews is not exactly what happened there. That was during the 1973 World Series against the Mets, and in Game 2, Andrews made 2 errors, and Finley released him. He didn't bench him. He's indicating, he didn't want to play him. No, he released him from the team during the World Series, and that was a bad look. Wasn't anything really against the rules, but okay, Kuhn fined him for that. The explanation that Bowie Kuhn gave for this best interest of baseball, where he wouldn't allow him to sell Joe Rudy and Rollie Fingers to the Red Sox and Vita Blue to the Yankees, he said, if such transactions, this is Kuhn, if such transactions now and in the future were permitted, the door would open wide to the buying of success by the more affluent clubs. Public suspicion would be aroused. Traditional and sound methods of player development and acquisition would be undermined, and our efforts to preserve competitive balance would be greatly impaired. Of course, the next year, the Yankees went and signed Reggie Jackson, and they won back-to-back World Series. Finley called Kuhn a village idiot, and then filed that lawsuit against him. As it turned out, he lost all 3 of the players. He traded Vita Blue. He still had time left on his original contract. He traded him to the San Francisco Giants before the 1978 season. But Rollie Fingers went and signed with the San Diego Padres, and Joe Rudy went and signed with the Angels. And he got nothing in return for those guys. And you think about, what he wanted to do, and what he should have been able to do is take the money that he was getting for players. This happens all the time now at the trade deadline, which, by the way, is in August, not June 15th in those days. But you got guys with expiring contracts, and you're not going to re-sign them. You trade them for prospects unless you're making a run at the World Series. Finley had a lot of crazy ideas, some of which, if you look back on them, actually made a lot of sense. One of them was to have an orange baseball. They never adopted that, but it was his idea to have the designated hitter. He also wanted to have the count reduced from 4 balls and 3 strikes to 3 balls and 3 strikes. If you threw 3 balls, that was a walk. So he wanted to, do something to speed up the game. They didn't have as much problem in those days as they had now, and had to go to the pitch clock. But that was the idea that was there. And also, he had an idea that nobody would ever be signed to a long-term contract. Every contract would be year to year, and a player would become a free agent at the end of the year. And some players, you have a great year, you can sign for a lot of money. But the Players Association, even though they were going to have across the board free agency after every year, they said, ooh, we don't want to do that. And fortunately for them, the owners said no. And Finley understood, what was happening there. And he looked at the rising salaries, even in 1976, and said this to Johnny.
It's not the athletes, believe me. It's these stupid owners that go out and offer that kind of money.
Well, now you're an owner.
Yes, I am, but I don't go out throwing my money down the drain like some of the others do, because in the first place, I can't afford it. In the second place, if I did have the money, I think I'd be much smarter than to pour it down the drain that way.
Are the Oakland A's making money?
Well, let me put it this way.
How long have you had the A's now?
This is my 16th year, and I'm happy to tell you that in the 16 years that I've owned the club, we spent a lot of money to produce championship teams. We haven't made any big money, but by spending our money wisely, if I may put it that way, we've been able to stay in the black. Not very much, but we're in the black, and we hope we can stay in the black.
Finley sold the A's in 1980, died in 1996. That $10 million court case against Bowie Kuhn that went nowhere. Ultimately, a U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of Kuhn, and he served as commissioner until 1984 and died in 2007. And so what Bowie's old school thinking was, that I could hold the line. He didn't do that. They made Peter Ueberroth, curiously, what Finley's saying about the owners being their worst enemies. They replaced Bowie Kuhn with Peter Ueberroth, who had done a good job as chairman of the U.S. Olympic Committee when the Olympics were in Los Angeles. The Olympics always lose money. They made money on those Olympics. So the owners looked at him as somebody, okay, he can really help us. And what unfortunately for Ueberroth, what happened with him is he said to the other owners, hey, you guys are all working against yourselves. Basically what Finley said there. It said, just don't spend the money. So, we had a year, what was it, 1985 or 86, whatever it was. They didn't spend money, and the players later sued for collusion and won a huge settlement against the owners, and that was the end of Ueberroth. And, that's when we had Bart Giamatti take over. Unfortunately, he died in 1989 right after kicking Pete Rose out of the game, and then Fay Vincent, and that led to Bud Selig, and now we have Rob Manfred. But that was a really interesting and contentious time 48 years ago, where Charlie Finley was doing what was in the best interest of his team, and the commissioner said, nope, it's not in the best interest of baseball. And he said only the rich teams are going to start signing free agents. Rich teams started signing free agents, like the Yankees. Yankees got great. They had made now. They had added a couple of them earlier. They had they got Catfish Hunter and a few players and developed them in the system. But they got swept by the Reds in the 76 World Series. 77 they beat the Dodgers, and 78 they beat them again. And those were big money teams playing in the World Series. Way to go, Bowie. By the way, it's local. Went to Roosevelt High School. Played on the basketball team, coached by Red Auerbach, but sat on the bench. There you go. Mike Callow is in for Tony next. I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.